the blaring digital shriek of the alarm clock was a daily violation of the profound silence that had come to define Alara Vance's life. For a few disorienting seconds each morning, suspended in the hazy limbo between sleep and consciousness, she would forget. The world was still whole, her life still a continuous, unbroken line. Then her hand would drift across the cool, unrumpled linen of the empty side of the bed, and reality would crash down with the force of a physical blow. The divorce was final. 3 months had not dulled the sharp edges of that truth. They had only made the silence more articulate. At 36, her existence felt surgically divided into a before and an after. The before was a landscape of comfortable, if unexciting routines, 12 years of marriage, a home filled with the shared detritus of a life built together, a career at a reputable firm, and annual, dutiful pilgrimages to his family's sprawling property in the countryside, where she often found herself, weeding the extensive vegetable garden while he and his old friends clinked bottles of craft beer on the porch. The after was this: a 2-bedroom apartment in a characterless modern block in the bustling city of Crestwood, filled with a silence so deep she could hear the electronic hum of the refrigerator from 2 rooms away. It was a silence that spoke not of peace, but of absence, a constant, aching reminder of a future that had been irrevocably cancelled. With a sigh that seemed to originate from the very marrow of her bones, she pushed back the duvet. The morning ritual was a study in solitary motion. She padded across the plush, gray carpet, her footsteps muffled, and slipped on a well-worn terry cloth robe, tying the belt securely around her waist as if to physically hold herself together. The kitchen, with its sleek, stainless steel appliances that had seemed so modern and promising when she'd bought them, now felt sterile and transient. The one reliably cheerful entity in the entire space was the electric kettle, a matte black contraption that came to a boil with a satisfying, swift roar. It was efficient, dependable, and asked for nothing in return, qualities she was beginning to value above all others. She poured the steaming water over the coarse grounds in her French press, the rich, earthy aroma of coffee beginning to permeate the air, a small, sensory anchor in the formless sea of her new life. Carrying the heavy mug to the large window in the living area, she looked out at the cityscape of Crestwood, a vista of steel, glass, and concrete painted in the muted, watery palette of an early April morning. A light drizzle misted the window pane, blurring the sharp edges of the buildings and turning the headlights of the morning commuters into smears of gold and white. Welcome to a new day, she murmured to her reflection in the glass, a wry, tired smile touching her lips. The phrase had become a private, grimly humorous mantra for this unwanted chapter. Today was a Monday, which meant a full 5-day stretch awaited her at the small, somewhat claustrophobic accounting office of a private firm named Apex Dynamics. It was a grand, almost comically ambitious title for a business that consisted of precisely 5 employees, all crammed into a warren of 3 small rooms on the 4th floor of a heritage-listed commercial building in the city's old quarter, its corridors perpetually smelling of old wood and disinfectant. She had secured the position through her oldest friend, Lena, who had a cousin who knew a former client of the firm's director. In the desperate, disorienting aftermath of the divorce, Alara had needed an immediate income, funds for the formidable legal fees, for the staggering utility bills of a home she now solely owned, for the simple, daunting act of continuing to exist. She'd been forced to leave her previous, more prestigious role at a large, corporate retail chain. The constant, whispered questions and the pitying glances from her colleagues there had become a form of exquisite torture. All she had wanted was anonymity, a place to bury herself in columns of numbers and financial statements, where the past was irrelevant and the only thing that mattered was the bottom line. Apex Dynamics had offered that sanctuary. The director, a man in his late 50s named Alistair Finch, had interviewed her with an air of detached appraisal. He was a man whose hairline was in strategic retreat and whose expression seemed permanently set to a default of mild dissatisfaction, as if perpetually smelling something faintly off. He had glanced at her credentials, listened with a noncommittal grunt to the summary of her 15 years of experience, and named a salary that was adequate, if not inspiring. Asterisk, asterisk, Ilara had accepted on the spot. The work itself was straightforward, almost rudimentary for someone of her caliber: processing invoices, reconciling bank statements, preparing quarterly VAT returns, and managing the ledgers for a handful of small business clients. Asterisk, asterisk, it was mentally undemanding, and for now, that was precisely what she needed. Finishing the last of her coffee, its warmth a temporary comfort, Ilara, dressed in her standard office attire, a pair of dark-washed jeans, a simple cashmere blend sweater, and comfortable leather flats. At precisely 7:50 a.m., she locked the apartment door behind her. The click of the deadbolt, a definitive sound. Asterisk, asterisk, her commute was a meticulously timed 45-minute symphony of urban transit, a 7-minute walk to the Northgate metro station, a 25-minute ride on the Blue Line, and a final 10-minute walk through the cobblestone streets of the old quarter to the Apex Dynamics building. Asterisk, asterisk, it was a route she had trodden every weekday for the past 3 months, its familiarity a dull anchor in her newly unmoored life. Exiting her apartment building, she turned left onto a narrow, tree-lined street that sloped gently down towards the metro entrance. Asterisk, asterisk, it was here, nestled in a recessed doorway of a now shuttered bakery, that she had first seen the elderly woman. From that very first day of her new job, the woman had been a fixture, a still point in the swirling motion of the morning rush. She never called out, never held out a trembling hand, never made eye contact in a pleading way. Asterisk, asterisk, she simply sat, a small, hunched figure on a folded piece of worn-out cardboard, wrapped in a coat that had long ago faded from its original color to a nondescript beige. A small, tin cup, the kind that might have once held fancy marmalade, sat on the pavement before her. Asterisk, asterisk, a piece of cardboard, upon which the words "A little kindness goes a long way" were written in a shaky, but neat, script, was propped against the wall. Ilara did not consider herself a particularly sentimental person. Life had sanded away much of that asterisk, asterisk, yet something about this woman, the profound stillness of her posture, the weary dignity in her downcast eyes, pierced through Ilara's own shell of grief. Perhaps it was a recognition of a different kind of loss, a different sort of solitude. Asterisk, asterisk, from that first morning, she had begun dropping her loose change into the cup, a couple of copper coins, a silver 2-pound piece, sometimes a 5-pound note if she had one. Asterisk, asterisk, the old woman would always look up, her eyes, the color of a winter sky, meeting Ilara's for a brief moment, and she would give a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Bless you, my dear," she would whisper, her voice a dry rustle of leaves, and Ilara would nod back before continuing on her way. This unspoken ritual had continued without fail for 3 months. Sometimes, on less frantic mornings, they would exchange a few words. Asterisk, asterisk, that was how Ilara learned the woman's name was Mrs. Eliza Croft. She was 82 years old. She spoke vaguely of having a room not far from here, but said she couldn't bear to be cooped up inside all day. Ilara never pressed for details. She understood the sanctity of a private sorrow. This particular Monday morning, the city air felt heavier, the drizzle a little colder. Ilara paused as usual, her fingers automatically finding the familiar jingle of coins in her paquita, handful of change, amounting to maybe 2 or 3 pounds. She bent down, her movements practiced, ready to drop them into the cup with a soft clink. Asterisk, asterisk, suddenly, with a speed that was startling and utterly out of character, a hand shot out and closed around her wrist. The fingers were thin and gnarled, like the roots of an ancient tree, but their grip was surprisingly, unnervingly strong, a vice of bone and sinew. Ilara's head snapped up. Mrs. Croft was looking at her, and for the first time, her eyes were not weary or distant. Asterisk, asterisk, they were wide, alert, and filled with a sharp, unmistakable fear that seemed to crackle in the damp air between them. "Listen to me, child," the old woman whispered, her voice low and urgent, her breath forming small plumes in the chill. Her grip tightened, anchoring Ilara to the spot. Asterisk, asterisk, do not go back to your home tonight. Do you hear me? Not under any circumstances. Ilara tried to gently pull her hand back, a reflex of surprise and discomfort, but the old woman held fast. "Mrs. Croft, what are you talking about? What's wrong?" Her own voice sounded thin, reedy. Asterisk, asterisk, stay somewhere else. A hotel, a boarding house, with your friend Lena, anywhere but there. You must promise me. The tremor in her voice was not from age, but from a genuine, palpable terror that was contagious. A cold finger of dread traced its way down Ilara's spine. a sensation so visceral it made her shiver. The world around them continued its oblivious flow. Commuters hurried past, briefcases swinging, headphones on. There lives a self-contained universe away from this strange, intense exchange in a grimy doorway. Mrs. Croft, please, you're frightening me. What's happened? Have you heard something? The old woman released her wrist as abruptly as she had seized it, leaning back against the cold stone of the doorway, as if suddenly exhausted, all her fierce energy spent. Come and find me tomorrow morning. I will show you, but you must not go home tonight. You have been a spot of grace in my days. Let me do this one thing for you. Please, listen to an old woman. Ilara stood up, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She stared down at Mrs. Croft, her mind a chaotic jumble of confusion, skepticism, and rising, inexplicable anxiety. The old woman had turned her face away. The conversation clearly, definitively over. A young man in a pinstriped suit dropped a coin into the cup with a clink, and Mrs. Croft gave her usual, automatic nod of thanks. The mask of the anonymous street dweller back in place, the moment of terrifying lucidity gone as if it had never happened. Ilara stood rooted to the spot for a long moment, feeling unmoored and strangely vulnerable. Then, moving like an automaton, she turned and mechanically continued her walk towards the Northgate station. All the way to the office, crammed between the damp wool coats and briefcases of strangers on the metro, the old woman's words echoed in her mind, a discordant, alarming refrain. Don't go home. Sleep somewhere else. Was it the rambling of a mind softened by age, hardship, and the cold, a paranoid fantasy born from a life on the streets, or had Mrs. Croft seen or heard something concrete? Something sinister that her lucid mind had correctly interpreted as a direct threat to a life. But what, and why today? The questions swirled, finding no purchase, only feeding the growing knot of tension in her stomach. She pushed through the heavy, brass and glass door of her office building, the familiar scent of lemon polish and old paper doing little to calm her. She took the creaking, vintage elevator to the 4th floor and entered the reception area of Apex Dynamics. Chloe, the receptionist, a young woman with a perpetually glossy manicure who seemed to conduct most of her social life via her smartphone, barely glanced up from her screen. Morning, she mumbled, her thumbs flying across the glass. Morning, Ilara replied, her own voice sounding thin and far away to her ears. She retreated into the small, windowless office that was her domain, closing the door with a soft click, as if to shut out the creeping unease. The workday began, a familiar procession of digital invoices and spreadsheet cells. The routine, which usually had a calming, meditative effect, failed her completely today. The numbers blurred before her eyes, and the old woman's warning buzzed incessantly at the edge of her consciousness, a persistent, discordant hum underlying the quiet tap of her keyboard. Around 11, desperate for a distraction, she took a break and went to the small kitchenette to make a cup of tea. As she stood waiting for the kettle to boil, staring at the motley collection of mugs, the new security guard, Leo, walked in. Leo was a man in his late 40s, with a solid, boxer's build and a head of closely shorn salt and pepper hair. He'd been with Apex Dynamics for about 2 months, and their interactions had never extended beyond polite, generic greetings about the weather. Bit brisk out there this morning, he remarked, reaching for a paper cup from the dispenser. His voice was a low rumble. Yes, the rain doesn't help, Ilara agreed, stirring her tea, not looking at him. He filled his cup with water from the cooler, and then, seemingly as an afterthought, turned to her. So, you live far from the office? He asked. The question was innocuous on the surface, the kind of filler talk that fills office spaces worldwide. But it landed on Ilara's already frayed nerves with the force of an accusation. She felt a sudden, inexplicable tension coil in her shoulders. Why do you ask? The words came out sharper than she intended. He shrugged, a casual, rolling motion of his broad shoulders. No reason, just making conversation. Must be a long trek in every day. It's manageable. The metro is reliable. She deliberately avoided giving any detail, a defensive instinct she didn't fully understand. Something in his casual tone felt studied, rehearsed, as if he were checking a box. Leo nodded, took a sip of his water, and ambled back out towards his post by the main entrance. Ilara remained in the kitchenette, clutching her warm mug, watching him go. Why this sudden interest? They had barely exchanged a dozen words in all the time he'd worked here. The question, following so closely on the heels of Mrs. Croft's warning, felt less like small talk and more like the first, deliberate piece of a puzzle she desperately did not want to solve. Back at her desk, she tried to force herself to focus, to lose herself in the clean logic of debits and credits, but the sense of unease was now a live wire in the room, crackling with latent energy. By lunchtime, she had almost managed to convince herself that she was being ridiculous, weaving paranoid fantasies from the cryptic words of an elderly woman and a harmless comment from a coworker, but the cold knot of anxiety in her stomach refused to dissolve, a stubborn core of intuition that defied logic. The sense of impending wrongness crystallized at 2:30. When Alistair Finch appeared in her doorway, the director looked uncharacteristically agitated, a thin sheen of perspiration on his brow despite the coolness of the office, a manila folder clutched in his hand like a weapon. Elara, a question about these, he said, not waiting for an invitation before pulling up the spare chair and sitting opposite her, his presence immediately making the small room feel claustrophobic. He opened the folder to reveal a stack of service invoices from the previous months. These statements for the Pendleton project. Did you process the verification for them? Elara took the folder, her fingers feeling numb, and leafed through the documents. They were standard forms she had handled herself for a client who designed custom furniture. Yes, of course. Is there a problem? Her voice was steady, a professional mask over her rising panic. 3 of them are missing the client's authorized signature. Did you not notice? Elara frowned, taking a closer look, her accountant's eyes scanning the familiar lines. Alistair was right. On 3 of the invoices, the space for the client's signature was conspicuously, glaringly blank. That was impossible. She had a distinct, photographic memory of verifying those very documents. She remembered because the client, Mr. Pendleton, had a very distinctive, flamboyant signature that looped dramatically across the page. No, that can't be right. When I processed them, the signatures were there, I'm certain of it. I cross-referenced them with the delivery dockets before filing them. Alistair rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous gesture, avoiding her direct gaze. All right, perhaps I'm mistaken. The originals must be in another file. My apologies for troubling you. He gathered the folder with a haste that bordered on rudeness and left her office without another word. Closing the door softly behind him, Elara sat in the sudden, profound silence, staring at the closed door as if it were a portal to another, more terrifying reality. A cold certainty settled over her, colder than the April rain. She was not mistaken. With 15 years of meticulous accounting practice behind her, she had developed a near-obsessive attention to detail. It was the bedrock of her professional identity. Those signatures had been there. Someone had removed those pages from the file and replaced them with unsigned copies. But who and why? The remainder of the afternoon passed in a fog of heightened tension. Every footstep in the corridor made her jump. Every ring of the telephone felt like a personal alarm. She was a mouse in a maze, sensing the shadow of the predator but unable to see it. When the clock on her computer screen finally blinked to 6 p.m., she gathered her things with trembling hands, her movements rushed and furtive, and left the office without saying goodbye to anyone. The evening air was cool and damp, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement in long, shimmering streaks. She walked on autopilot towards the Northgate station, her body following the well-worn path while her mind screamed in protest. Don't go home. Mrs. Croft's voice was now a clear, insistent command in her head, no longer a whisper but a roar. She stopped dead in the middle of the busy sidewalk, people flowing around her like a river around a stone, their indifference a stark contrast to the life-or-death decision she was wrestling with. What was she supposed to do? Dismiss it as the delusion of a lonely old woman, go home, have a bath, and try to forget the strangeness of the day, or heed the warning that had, so far, been corroborated by a strangely inquisitive security guard and mysteriously altered official documents. The fear in Mrs. Croft's eyes had been real. It was a primal, knowing fear that Elara's own gut, her own survival instinct, could not ignore. Pulling her phone from her pocket, her fingers cold and clumsy, She opened a travel app and searched for budget accommodation nearby. She found a place called the Traveler's Rest, a no-frills hotel a few blocks away, advertising cheap nightly rates. She booked a room for one night, paid with her credit card, and instead of descending into the bright, tiled mouth of the metro, she turned and walked with purpose towards the hotel's address, her heart a frantic drum in her chest. The Traveler's Rest was housed in a tired-looking brick building on a quiet side street, squeezed between a kebab shop and a laundrette. The lobby was dimly lit, smelling faintly of disinfectant and old carpet. The clerk, a young woman with vibrant purple hair, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, handed her a keycard for a 4-bed dormitory room without making eye contact. Room 214. Stairs are to your left. Checkout is at 11. LR climbed a worn, carpeted staircase, each step feeling like a surrender to madness, and found the room. It was small and utilitarian, containing 2 sets of metal-framed bunk beds, a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling. It was, thankfully, empty. She dropped her bag and laptop case onto the lower bunk nearest the window and sat down heavily, the thin, vinyl-covered mattress offering little comfort. She put her head in her hands, her elbows on her knees. What was she doing here? This was madness. She should be in her own apartment, with her own things, heating up a ready meal, watching some mindless television, and trying to forget the strangeness of the day. But the prickle of danger on her skin, the cold, logical part of her that had connected Leo's question to the missing signatures to Mrs. Croft's terror, would not let her dismiss it. She was a rational person, and the rational conclusion was that she was in danger. She sent a quick, evasive text to Lena. Staying at a friend's tonight. Long story, we'll explain tomorrow. Lena's reply was almost instantaneous, laden with hopeful implication. Oh, a friend, do tell. Elara didn't respond, the lie making her feel even more isolated. She lay back on the bunk, staring at the acoustic tiled ceiling, listening to the distant, muffled sounds of the city, the growl of a bus changing gear, the wail of a siren fading into the distance, the fragmented conversations of people on the street below, living their normal, unthreatened lives. She closed her eyes, but sleep was a distant country. Her mind churned, assembling the disparate pieces into a terrifying whole. Mrs. Croft's warning, Leo's interest in her commute, Alistair Finch and the unsigned invoices. What if it was all connected? What if something profoundly illicit was happening at Apex Dynamics, and she, the new, anonymous accountant, had inadvertently stumbled upon it, but she saw nothing overtly illegal in her daily work. She just processed the paperwork that crossed her desk. Suddenly, she sat bolt upright on the bunk, a cold realization washing over her like a bucket of ice water. What if that was the entire point? What if she was seeing it, but was simply processing it as normal business? What if fraudulent transactions were being passed through her hands, and her professional diligence, her stamp of approval, was just giving them a veneer of legitimacy? The unsigned invoices. Had she been getting too close to noticing a pattern, a discrepancy that couldn't be easily explained away? Had her simple, professional query to Alistair been the trigger that marked her for elimination? The thought was utterly terrifying. She wasn't a person to them. She was a cog in a criminal machine, and she had just made an unexpected, dangerous sound. And now, the machine was trying to silence the cog before it could seize up entirely. It was well past midnight, when sheer exhaustion finally overpowered the churning anxiety, and she fell into a fitful, troubled sleep. Her dreams were a chaotic, nightmarish montage of towering stacks of paper that teetered precariously, columns of numbers that rearranged themselves into menacing, skeletal shapes, and a pair of strong, gnarled hands, sometimes Mrs. Croft's, sometimes belonging to a faceless figure, methodically changing entries in a vast, leather-bound ledger while her back was turned. She was running through endless, identical corridors, the smell of smoke thick in the air, but she could never find the exit. She was jolted awake not by a dream, but by a violent, insistent vibration on the plastic nightstand. Her phone was ringing, the screen glowing brightly in the pre-dawn gloom of the room, casting frantic, shifting shadows. She fumbled for it, her heart already racing, a sickening sense of dread blooming in her chest. The digital clock on the phone read 4:17 a.m. It was Lena. Oh my God, are you okay? Are you alive? Lena's voice was shrill, choked with a panic so raw it was contagious. Lena, of course I'm alive. What's wrong? Elara mumbled, pushing herself up onto her elbows, her mind still thick with the residue of nightmares. Asterisk, your building. There's a fire. It's all over the news. The whole fourth floor is engulfed. The fire brigade is everywhere. The whole street is blocked off. Where are you? Please tell me you weren't home. Ilara's blood ran cold. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The shabby dormitory room swimming around her. What? A fire. My building. The words were stupid, inadequate. Yes, the news chopper is showing it live. It's a huge blaze. Your floor. Were you there? No. The word was a breath, a prayer of thanks to a homeless prophet. No, I'm at the hotel. I'm at the Traveler's Rest. Oh, thank God. Oh, Ilara, what is going on? This is insane. Ilara didn't answer. She was already moving, her body operating on a pure, adrenalized autopilot. She scrambled out of the bunk, her legs unsteady. She pulled on her jeans and sweater from the day before, the fabric cold against her skin, grabbed her jacket and bag, and ran out of the room, leaving the keycard on the desk. She took the stairs 2 at a time, her footsteps echoing in the silent stairwell, and burst out onto the quiet Predon Street. The air was cold and clean, a stark contrast to the image in her mind. Frantically, she opened a rideshare app, her fingers trembling so violently she could barely type her home address. The car arrived within minutes, a ghost in the sleeping city, and she slid into the back seat, giving the driver terse, urgent directions. There's a fire. My building, please, hurry. The journey was a blur of streetlights and a growing, ominous, orange glow on the horizon. She stared out the window, seeing nothing, her mind a roaring white noise of disbelief and horror. Mrs. Croft's face, her terrified eyes, her urgent whisper, they were no longer just a strange memory. They were a prophecy, a life-saving intervention of almost biblical proportion. The car turned onto her street, and the scene that met her eyes was one of surreal, organized chaos. The flashing blue and red lights of multiple fire engines painted the surrounding buildings in a pulsating, garish glow, throwing long, dancing shadows. A thick, acrid plume of black smoke billowed into the night sky, illuminated from below by the angry, voracious orange of the flames that still licked hungrily at the shattered windows of the 4th floor. Her floor. She got out of the car, the smell of burned wood and plastic assaulting her nostrils, and stood frozen, a spectator at the destruction of her own life. A crowd of her neighbors, huddled together under foiled blankets like survivors of a disaster movie, stood behind a cordon of police tape, their faces pale and streaked with soot, their eyes wide with shock. She saw Mr. Abernathy from 5B, still in his pajamas and dressing gown, clutching a cat carrier. She saw the young couple from Tua, clutching each other, their twin babies, thankfully safe and wailing in a double prom. Everyone wore the same stunned, vacant expression. The universal look of those whose world has been violently upended. A hand touched her arm, making her jump. It was Mrs. Gable, her neighbor from across the hall, a kindly woman in her 70s who always baked scones at Christmas. Her face was smudged with ash, and she was shivering violently. You're safe. We were sure you were in there. We heard the smoke alarms, but the smoke was so thick. No, Ilara managed, the word catching in her dry throat. I stayed with a friend last night. It was the same, simple lie, now a shield that had saved her life. A miracle, a true miracle. Your apartment, it's gone, completely. The Greenberg's place, too, next door to you. They got out, but they were taken to hospital. Smoke inhalation, and burns. Ilara could only nod, her gaze fixed on the burning shell of her home. Her apartment. Every physical reminder of her past life, the furniture she'd painstakingly chosen after the divorce, a declaration of independence, the books she'd collected since university, each one a friend, the photo albums filled with images of a life that was gone, her grandmother's china, the last fragile link to her family. All of it was being consumed by the inferno, reduced to ash and memory. But she was alive. The stark, terrifying truth settled upon her with the weight of the world. If not for the whispered warning of a homeless old woman, she would be in there, trapped, suffocated, burned. She would be a name in a news report, a statistic of a tragic fire. She pulled out her phone, her hands shaking uncontrollably. It was just after 5 in the morning. The sky was beginning to lighten to a dirty gray. Mrs. Croft had said to come in the morning. She had to wait. She had to get to her. Asterisk, asterisk. Elara moved away from the crowd, finding a low wall to sit on, leaning her head against the cold brick of a neighboring building, and closing her eyes. The fire, the targeted, ferocious nature of it, it was no accident. It was a deliberate, calculated attempt to erase her. The dawn broke slowly, a pale, sickly light creeping over the horizon, doing little to dispel the gloom of the smoke and the collective despair. Asterisk, asterisk. Elara remained on the wall for over 2 hours, a statue of grief and fury, watching as the firefighters, those anonymous heroes in bulky suits, finally began to gain the upper hand, the torrents of water from their hoses slowly drowning the last stubborn pockets of flame, turning the roaring beast into a hissing, steaming ruin. Around 6:30 a.m., a police officer, a young woman with a tired but kind face and her hair pulled back in a severe bun, approached her. "Elara Vance?" she asked, consulting a tablet. "Yes, apartment 404. You weren't in the building at the time of the fire." "No, I was staying elsewhere." Asterisk, asterisk. The officer made a note on her tablet. "You're very fortunate. The initial point of origin appears to have been in or near your apartment. The investigators are on scene now. Do you have any idea what might have caused it?" "Faulty wiring. Perhaps you left the cooker on." Asterisk, asterisk. Elara shook her head, the lie feeling like ash in her mouth. To tell the truth now, to speak of Mrs. Croft and her warning, of Leo and Alistair, would sound like the ravings of someone in shock, a trauma-induced fantasy. No idea. All right, the fire investigation unit will be in touch. Asterisk, asterisk. Here's my card. Please call if you think of anything at all. She handed Elara a business card and moved on to speak to another shell-shocked resident. Elara tucked the card into her pocket, a useless talisman. It was time. She called another rideshare and gave the address for the Northgate station. Asterisk, asterisk. During the short journey, she stared blankly out the window, the full weight of her loss beginning to press down on her, a physical ache in her chest. She was homeless, possessionless, and the target of a murderer. Her life had been irrevocably shattered in a single night, and the only thing she had left was the truth and the woman who held it. The car pulled up by the familiar station entrance. The city was now fully awake, the morning rush beginning in earnest, a cruel parody of normalcy. Elara got out, paid the driver, and scanned the area, her heart in her throat. There, in her usual spot in the shuttered bakery doorway, sitting on her piece of cardboard as if it were a throne, was Mrs. Eliza Croft. Asterisk, asterisk. The old woman saw her and gave a slow, deliberate nod, her winter sky eyes holding a world of grim knowledge. Elara walked over and knelt beside her on the damp pavement, the rough concrete biting through her jeans, oblivious to the passers-by. "Mrs. Croft, the fire," she began, her voice cracking. Asterisk, asterisk. "I know, child. I saw the smoke, heard the sirens. Thank the heavens you listened." The old woman's voice was steady, but her hands, clasped in her lap, were trembling, betraying the storm of emotion beneath her calm exterior. "You knew, you really knew. They meant to kill you," Mrs. Croft stated, the words simple, blunt, and horrifying. Asterisk, asterisk. She reached into the worn cloth bag she always kept at her side and pulled out a cheap, prepaid mobile phone, the kind sold in supermarket kiosks for a handful of pounds. The screen was cracked, the body scuffed. "Here, look at this." Elara took the phone. It was cold and light in her hand. She pressed the button, and the screen lit up to show a photograph. Asterisk, asterisk. The image was grainy, taken in poor light, but it was clear enough to make her blood run cold. It showed the rear service alley behind her apartment building, illuminated by a single, weak security light, casting long, distorted shadows. 2 men were standing near the building's back entrance. One was holding a red plastic container, the kind used for gasoline. Asterisk, asterisk. That's my building," Elara whispered, her throat so tight she could barely speak. "It is, child. They were there 2 nights ago, just looking, scouting the place. Then, last night, around 9:30, I was in the stairwell of the building next door. It's warmer there, you see, out of the wind, and I came out for a bit of air." Asterisk, asterisk. "I saw them again. This time, both had those cans. I knew it was trouble, bad trouble. I had this old thing," she said, tapping the phone with a gnarled finger, and I took pictures. I didn't know what else to do. They went into the basement, were down there for 10 minutes or so, then came out and went up the fire escape stairs. A few minutes later, they came running back down without the cans and disappeared down the alley. That's when the fire started. I started banging on doors, shouting as loud as I could. Fire! I yelled. Someone called the fire brigade. Ilara, her hand trembling, scrolled through the next few photos, the men emerging from the basement, one of them adjusting his jacket, a casual gesture of a man completing a chore. The second looking furtively over his shoulder, a glimpse of paranoia, and then, in one shot, as one of the men turned slightly towards the light, his face was caught in profile, the angle and the illumination making it clear enough to be unmistakable. It was Leo, the security guard from Apex Dynamics, his square jaw, his salt and pepper buzz cut. There was no doubt. A wave of nausea washed over her, so strong she thought she might be sick right there on the pavement. I know him, she said, her voice a hoarse croak. He works at my office. His name is Leo. Mrs. Croft nodded grimly, a look of profound sorrow on her face. I thought it might be so. He's been loitering around your street the last few evenings, and I heard him. He said your name. He said, that'll be the end of Ilara's nosiness. You know something, child, something they can't afford for you to know. But I don't. I'm just an accountant. I process documents, I push paper. Then there's something in that paper, something that has them terrified. Think, child, did you see something you shouldn't have? Ask a question that made someone nervous. Ilara cast her mind back to the previous afternoon, to Alistair Finch standing in her office, sweating, holding the folder of invoices. The director, he came to me yesterday about some invoices. He said they were missing client signatures. I told him they were there when I processed them. He seemed worried. Agitated. He left quickly. There it is, Mrs. Croft murmured, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. They were using you to launder money, or something of the sort. You noticed the discrepancy. You asked about it, and they panicked. They decided to silence you before you took your questions to the authorities. Ilara remained crouched on the pavement, the cold seeping into her bones, the world narrowing to this single, shocking truth. The pieces clicked into place with a horrifying, final clarity. They had been using her. Her professional reputation, her meticulous work, was a shield for their fraud, and her simple, professional query had made her a liability to be eliminated. It was that cold, that calculated. What do I do now? She asked, her eyes pleading with the old woman, who had become her only guide in this nightmare. You go to the police, you give them this phone, you tell them everything, just as you've told me. The proof is right here. Let them deal.